This is Grow with the Bros, hosted by Ryan and Ken Parsons, founders of the Brothers That Just Do Gutters. Welcome to another episode of Out of the Gutter, Behind the Brother. We've made every mistake in the book, so you don't have to. Our time to evolve as business owners is now. Let's grow together. On today's episode, we're going to talk to Jimmy and Jessica Olang, our Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania franchisees. We're going to discuss their story and how they've grown their business so quickly. So this all starts way back when, and I'm going to let Ken kind of hop right in here.
Okay, well, I guess it started probably back in 1996, when I was on a missions trip to Kenya, Africa. Ended up being one of the best trips I ever made in my life because I met you, Jimmy. And what was so cool about it is I can't remember all the details, but Africa was such a beautiful place, the Great Rift Valley. But I got to meet you. I got to meet your family. And what was cool, as far as I can remember, somehow we got on the conversation of some of your family was already here in the United States, and that you were kind of like one of the last ones out of a family of, what, 8 or 9?
9.
9. Wow. One of the last ones to come over and join the rest of them over in the United States. And I remember you saying that after we had talked about, what I did over there, that you had mentioned, I want to come and work for you when I come over there. And I was just like, yeah, okay. I was like, how is he, you already had family over there. So I was like, okay, maybe he is going to come over there. But, it's just one of those things you say in passing to somebody, and then you never think you're ever going to see him again.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I guess, what's your side of that story? How do you remember it?
Actually,
I think he remembers it the opposite.
I think there are some similarities there. I think it's been a long time. So obviously 96, usually my wife says I don't even remember what, we ate for dinner last night. So, but to the best of my recollection, I mean, most of it is pretty true, which is, I met you when you came for a mission trip. And I still remember it was actually you and I think there were probably over 20 of you guys who came. And I think Nick, who was at the time, I think a junior pastor for the church we used to go to, that you used to go to in New York. And so we're talking as a group there, and, we're kind of asking each other like, oh, so what do you do? And what it's, and I think I just got out of high school, so I wasn't doing anything. And you're talking about, I own a gutter business, and I had no idea what that was, and I kind of just, oh, okay, kind of kept it moving, and then I remember you asking me, he's like, so when are you coming to the United States? And I just said, someday. I was hoping I would come at some point, and then I remember you actually saying that, well, if you come to America, I'll give you a job.
There you go. I was recruiting from day one.
That was it.
Always be recruiting.
He flew all the way to Africa just to recruit.
Best recruit.
Yeah.
Ever.
And I think, and then, yeah, like you said, you came back, and, like, I think we basically just, kind of lost touch. And then I remember then coming to the United States, and we ended up meeting again. So.
Yeah, I believe we met like almost a year later. You were there,
yeah.
And it was a Sunday morning at church.
Yes.
And we were in the back, I think, by the sound booth. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And, you were there. And then you said, hey, can I come to work for you tomorrow?
Actually, so, yeah, it was at Sunday morning. And it was actually, I think, as the service was ending. Again, my recollection is a little fuzzy. But you actually came out on the parking lot. And you're actually wearing your African attire that you had been given as a gift when you came to Kenya. And
wow.
I think you did that intentionally.
He said last night, I think he did that intentionally just to woo me.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever it takes.
I know.
Whatever it takes. When you're hiring talent, you got to do whatever it takes.
Hey, you never took me out for, a steak dinner, so I'm still waiting for that. That's
all these years.
Yeah. But
I think we went to carnivores when we were in Kenya. Didn't you come on that?
No, we
Oh.
didn't. At the time, we were not even allowed in those, those kinds of places. We were just, the regular folks.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm
stop.
dying to hear about your first day.
Yo, my first day.
A story for the ages.
Yeah. Well, let me just back up a little bit and actually talk about, a little bit about my background.
Okay, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Before meeting Kenny, actually. So, I grew up obviously in the villages of Africa in a small town called Oyugis. And, the second born of 7 children. So, and we were partly raised by my grandmother and partly raised by my parents. So in the village, it was just a typical village life. Everything was very simple. You tilled the land and you grew crops and you went hunting and you went to the market and you walked to school for miles, to bare feet with tattered shorts and stuff like that. And so it was a really, really simple upbringing, but, a really, really nice one too. And it kind of just, taught us the appreciating simple things in life and working hard and having those, those core values that make you, that give you, sort of like a upper hand, when you grow up and things like that. So that's kind of how I grew up. When I was 13, I moved to the city to do my high school. And then from high school, I didn't really know what I was going to do. So an opportunity came for me to go to Germany. So I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. So I went to Germany there for a few months, learned a little bit of the language. And then the opportunities didn't pan out the way I thought it would. So I came back home not knowing what to do. And then I was pretty good at art. So I was, painting and selling them to galleries and stuff. And that doesn't really pay bills. So I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And then hence I met Kenny. And I guess that was kind of like the start of of something that would end up having me come to America. So
I have a question for you. What's the difference? I mean, you said you grew up in the village. What's the difference between a village like where you grew up in Africa and the difference between the village that you guys kind of live in right now in Allentown, Pennsylvania?
It's funny because Jesse and I were talking about some of these things yesterday, and it's unbelievable when people talk about, say for instance, poverty in America, what's considered like a village.
Yeah.
And what you guys probably consider as poverty here is, sometimes that's middle class in Kenya. So for us, or for me, growing up in the village where sometimes you're going to bed without food, or you only have like this much food and you have to basically, eat a certain amount so you can spare the rest of it for the next 2 days.
Wow.
I mean, that was really poverty. I mean, I can remember a couple of nights I went to bed hungry, because we just didn't have enough. So for me, it's a completely different mindset, what people consider poverty here, where, you can go to a dollar store and for like $5, you can feed an entire army, versus, yeah. So that's the difference, I think.
Wow, that's amazing. So now you're on a plane, you're heading to America to meet up with your family. Was this in the back of your mind, or was this something that, were you thinking like, I hope I see that guy because I want a job?
No, I mean, I think for me, it was just an opportunity open to come to America. And I think, I remember saying that if I ever had that opportunity, just like most people I think do, they want that opportunity because whatever backgrounds they're from doesn't award them that. And so for me, just coming to America was an opportunity by itself. I didn't care what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. I think I probably already forgot about Ken. And then here I was. And
I am pretty forgettable.
No.
yeah. But then and then we reconnected, and then the relationship started from there. So
that's great. So before we get into your first day, how did you and Jessi meet? How did all this come about?
Oh, she likes to tell this part of the story.
Do I? Well, we actually met online on a Christian dating site. At the time, it was like a little bit like embarrassing to tell people, like, we met online. Now it's like completely normal. But yeah, and then I mean, we were working. He was working 2 jobs. I was working as a teacher in Pennsylvania. He was in New York, and so we met everything happened pretty quickly, I guess. And we were engaged within a few months and married within a year. And
then she moved to New York.
I moved up to New York, to be with this crazy guy here who was working 2 jobs. He was working for what I always said was a high-end gutter company, because that's what I perceived it as. Like, he talked about
that's
you guys so highly.
It as.
He used to sell himself.
Told their parents. Oh no! It's a high-end gutter company, guys. Seriously.
What do you mean? You're marrying a guy whose head is in the gutter every day? Come on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That guy can't be a Christian.
Yeah, I know. You can't be a Christian and keep your head in the gutter. Not happening. Yeah.
Oh, that is great. And we'll dig in a little bit deeper there too. But all right, Jimmy, I've got Ken's side of the first day, and I'd love to hear your side of the first day.
Oh my gosh. I'd like to hear his first, his take on my first day. Well, my
Well, when he got
no, I want to tell my sides first, and then I want to know.
Okay. I think I do remember you being dropped off by. I think your dad dropped you off.
That's right. Yeah. So again, going back to that Sunday morning, he goes, "So are you ready to work?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." And he said, "So," and I asked, like, "What are we doing?" He's like, "Well, you're gonna come to the shop, and we're gonna jump into a truck, and then we're gonna install some gutters." Again, he never explained what gutters were, other than he said it's a rain system. And that's it. So I have no idea what to expect. In Kenya, rain is just rain. So first day, I'm in shorts and flip-flops, and my dad drops me off. And obviously, my dad didn't prep me either, because I don't think he knew what gutters were.
He should have known.
And what kind of shirt were you wearing?
Oh man, I don't remember. But
it was a white tank top.
Was it? I was
you would have loved it, Jessi.
I would have loved it.
I was pretty muscular back then. Oh my word, yeah.
Yeah.
But I showed up and to the address that you gave us, and it was your mother's house.
Yeah.
Right. I believe it was. And
humble beginnings, right?
Yeah. And there was
the barn was had a dirt floor.
It was a little barn or shed or whatever, barely hanging, right? It was red, I think it was, really small. Yeah. And there's a parked truck right over there. And it's like, yep, there we go. We're ready for work. And we kind of just threw some materials in the truck. And it was me and you. I think at the time it was just me and you, or there was this other kid, Zagami, Daniel Zagami.
Yeah.
Dan the man.
I don't remember if you came after, or I don't really recall, but that was us. So we went out, and our first day on the job was actually a construction site. It was one of I believe, the Toll Brothers. Okay. And
oh yeah,
so it was pretty high up, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I have to climb this thing up, this ladder. I'd never climbed a ladder. I'd never used tools before. And so it kind of started showing me, this is what
I think you were the first person to ever climb a ladder in flip-flops.
So that's awesome. So you hit your first day, you get up on a ladder. Did you think about not coming back?
Yeah, I don't remember, but I just kind of thought, well, that was a hard job, and it wasn't what I thought. I thought I was going to be sitting in some kind of a shop selling something. So it's just not what I expected. But I think I just, I came back the next day, and I think Kenny was asking me, so what do you think? Are you coming back? And I guess I must have came back, because here I am.
My goodness.
He probably liked that we stopped for lunch.
Yeah, you bought us lunch. I think that was a way to just keep me coming.
The way to everybody's heart in the beginning. Just buying lunch.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. I was like, oh my gosh, lunch.
Gosh, yeah.
All right, so now as you start sticking it out, what did you like about it? I mean, you had quite a long history before going on your own. What did you like about the gutter business?
I don't know that there was anything in particular that I liked about gutters. For me at the time, it was just a job. You know what I mean? That was my mindset, and that was my thinking. I was earning American dollars, and that was just great, But I think that as I began to kind of grow in the company, I started to feel like, hey, this is something that I can actually do for a living. I started enjoying it because I think one of the things that was so great about it is that you could go get something done and stand back and see it and admire your accomplishment. So from that standpoint, I think, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed also the idea of going to different places, different homes every day and being able to meet different clients and different people. And that was great for me to see. So I remember I started talking when Jess and I met, and I would tell her about gutters, and all of a sudden now she had eyes for gutters. She could
Gutter eyes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, at what point, so when did it turn from a job to kind of like an opportunity? So you went from job to career, and then it went to, you were thinking about actually, buying a franchise. Like, what was that evolution? What took place in your life to get to the point where this was no longer going to be your career, but you wanted to take it to the next level of business ownership?
Yeah. It obviously was a journey. I think I worked in New York for about 13 years with the brothers. When I came on, it was just a truck. There was Kenny in a truck. We did jobs, and you got paid, and Kenny just paid us. It paid me for the week, and that was it. And at the time, I believed that, even the idea of having systems in place was not even, in discussion. So it was just like a gutter job, a gutter company, just like everybody did it. Basically, one man show with an apprentice, and it felt okay. I earned a paycheck at the end of the week, and then it paid the bills. But then I saw all the struggles that came with that. I can't remember how many times we got, the truck broke down. It was leaking oil at a client's, a driveway. How many times, Kenny would have us being towed, would be sitting on the side of the road for hours. It was unbelievable. So I saw the chaos and the mess that came with not having a system in place. And I think, as you guys started kind of, educating yourselves on how to be able to run a business, associating yourselves with coaches and stuff, and started developing those systems, I started to see order and, a process, an actual process that now came from, that gave opportunities for someone like me to not just be an apprentice, but actually have a path to being something better and more. And
I vividly remember when Job, Jimmy's brother, was also working for you guys, and he got injured. And so he was out of the field for a long time, and Job was sort of leading.
Right.
And I remember Jimmy being like, they want me to lead. They need me to lead, basically. This was like, I don't know. Oh my gosh, 2010, right?
2000.
Yeah. So he's saying they want me to lead. I'm really he was not interested. He did not care to step into that role and lead. Yeah. And I think we were talking about this the other day. We always knew that he couldn't hang gutters forever. But there wasn't a real plan in our minds of what comes next. I think we always assumed that I would get a teaching job in New York, and that would supplement, and then we'd be able, but that was just not possible. I kept applying for positions, and there was 200 applicants. You couldn't even get an interview, even though I had teaching experience. It was frustrating. So it started to become more and more evident that okay, I'm not going to be teaching. What are we doing? Right. And I remember him saying he didn't want to lead, but you guys,
terrified.
He was like, no, that's not me. I can't do it. I can't, he didn't want to. And I was like, well, babe, if they think that you should lead, you need to lead. I know that they say there's not leadership can be, developed. Right. And that was Jimmy's story. I was always sort of a natural leader. I was like, come on, man, step up. Let's go. Yeah. But he was like, no, I'm not doing it. But
that was a huge turning point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you guys rolled out the skills ladder was the turning point, because all of a sudden it was tangible, and it was oh, wait a minute. If I do X, Y, Z, I can make this amount. I can get to this position. And all of a sudden there was a clear path in his mind, and I saw a switch over in him
Yeah.
And then we would like be up late doing book reports and stuff. I'd be like typing it up for him. I thought everything needed to be just perfect, but yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I think that if it wasn't for my brother getting hurt, and then kind of because at the time, there, again, like I said, there wasn't a process in place. So there wasn't the recruiting. I remember was, you know, I remember you guys were struggling with recruiting as well, just like, you know, because it just wasn't any system in place. There wasn't any promise of where someone can go. So I think there wasn't much to be able to attract people. So for me, I was very comfortable just being the helper to my brother, who was a lead guy. And until he got hurt, it forced me then to now take on the leadership role, which I hated, didn't want it. I really struggled with it. But you guys didn't have a bench. There was no bench of recruits. I mean, and so
there was nobody else. It all fell on you.
Because of that, I mean, that's where my leadership sort of capability started to develop from that. So sometimes I think the moral of the story there is sometimes, man, you got to be thrown into the thick of things, and you have to swim or sink. Or is it sink? Sink or swim.
And we learned a lot right there. Like that for us was a huge pivotal learning point as the owners, because there's a lot of times we tell ourselves, oh, this person can't do it, you know, but then when like things get real and something happens and people are forced to step up, it's amazing what we can accomplish. And you had what we call second man syndrome, where you're just comfortable, you know, second man, I'm good. I don't want to run the company. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I just want to go to work, do my job. And I see that in people, and you know, I don't know if it's okay or not. It's where they want to be, but it's amazing that if that didn't happen and that chain of events didn't happen, you probably wouldn't be where you are today. Right. That opportunity to lead and go and stretch yourself. So I really do feel like as owners of companies, as managers, if you have people working under you, it's your duty to not like wait till something, you know, tragic happens, but to literally, how do you create an atmosphere where you can help stretch them? Because it's amazing what people can accomplish, and it's amazing what you were able to accomplish. And I remember you literally would like not want to come in. You would be going out on your own because you messed up a job, but you didn't want to tell us, and you'd go out on a Saturday and fix it on your own. Like your heart was like in your, you know, throat. Right, for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
I would be so stressed out. You know, I didn't want to disappoint you guys. I wanted everything to be great. So I was constantly so burdened by, you know, just making sure I didn't make any mistakes. And if I did make a mistake, I wanted to correct it sometimes without you guys knowing. So sometimes on a Sunday after church, I'll be jumping into my car with a piece of a downspout, and I'm driving like an hour to go fix an extension that I forgot to put on there before the client complained. Oh my gosh! Sometimes.
You remember that time you filled up the diesel truck with gas? That was awesome.
We pulled after a gas station, and we forgot this was a diesel.
That's what we labeled. We labeled it gas only.
Jimmy, I appreciate it. That was a system we developed.
We did. We learned to develop a lot of systems as a result of your leadership. It was great.
Yeah.
All right. So.
You guys owe me, you know. I think you decided this is too much screw up. We have to develop systems.
Oh my goodness! All right, so then you get to the point. You're actually one of the first franchisees. We have Jonathan and Jeremiah that we've talked about that we did a partnership with to try and work out the kinks of if we were going to franchise this. But we finally got it to the point. We had the documents. We had everything. And I'll tell you, you know, and then you guys became interested in that opportunity. So why don't you kind of just bring us right up to there where all of a sudden it went from, you know, second man to leader to I can make a career here with the skills ladder and all that to saying, okay, you know what, maybe we're going to do this.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy was working, like he always worked 2 jobs from the time he came to the US. So he was working 2 jobs and putting himself through school. When he finished his associate's degree, then he would just continue to work 2 jobs always. And so from the time we got married in 2010, all the way through to 2015, 16, 15, 14, he was working 2 jobs. And it was killer, 2 full-time jobs. Yeah. And so he would hang gutters all day. He'd come home, eat some dinner, and he'd be right back out the door going to his nighttime job. So like it was insane. And I remember one night he came home, it was 4:00 in the morning. Actually, we had bought a house up in New York. I don't remember how long before that, but like maybe a year or so before that. But he got home at 4:00 in the morning, and I was like, what is he doing home? And he had lost his job because he fell asleep at work. Duh. So he had fallen asleep, and he was exhausted. I mean, he was just wearing himself out. And so we had a long conversation that night from 4:00 in the morning until he went in, to work for you guys about what we were going to do. And so it started things in motion. And I was 6 months pregnant with our second. And it was a big deal. That second job was the one where he had his insurance through, and it threw us into a tailspin. And so he went to you guys first just for a raise. We just needed something, right? And you guys were so generous. Like you put him in charge of like safety or something and just said like, yeah, here's a raise. And so that was great, but it still wasn't long-term plan. So I remember one day he came home and he's like, I think I want to start my own business. And I was like, wow. It was the first time I saw something in him that was like a spark in him that was like, I have a plan. I have a vision. I have an idea. And he said, I think we should move back to Pennsylvania. I think where my family's from, and start a gutter business. I was like, I love it. I don't want to do that by ourselves though. Let's sit down with Ryan and Kenny. Let's see I was like, we knew that Jeremiah and Jonathan had like some sort of branch. We're like, is that an option? Or can you at least support us, mentor us, teach us something?
I was actually thinking more of like a Jimmy or Jimbo's
Gutters.
And now it turns out right here in Pennsylvania, there is a Jimbo's Gutters. The name was already taken. That wouldn't have worked.
You should have trademarked it back then.
So I remember saying, all right, go into work. Tell Ryan and Kenny that you want to sit down with them, that you're thinking about starting your own thing. How can they help us? How can they support us? And I remember my jaw nearly hit the table when you guys said, we just submitted paperwork to the state to start franchising. And I was like, what? And we were like, yes. Like there was no doubt in our minds. Like that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember you guys, I mean, I've never been asked so many questions. I think Jessi, we should have you read all legal documents. You went through that. You asked questions. We'd have a call and you'd have your highlighter and the 7 questions that you wanted answered. Yeah. And I remember going through that process, and it was awesome. It was really cool. It was the first time for us, obviously first time for you guys, and it's big. It's life changing. Mm-hmm. And I remember very clearly one of you, or I think it might have been Jimmy, said, you're going to have to convince us why we should do this. Mm-hmm. And I remember really like pausing and saying, I will never convince you to do this. Like this isn't a sales pitch. This isn't about me trying to show you all the benefits. It's like if anybody could have done it on their own, you've seen everything we've ever done. And at the same time, it's like, if it's my salesmanship or Ken's salesmanship that has you buy a franchise, and then all of a sudden it's not what we said or what you thought, like forget it. And do you remember that? Because I really was not about convincing you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason that we were, it was a wise thing to do to grill you guys anyway, but the biggest reason was because literally everyone in our lives, except for our parents, was telling us this is a terrible idea. Like everybody was like, are you out of your minds? And we were like, we really believed in you guys. We know you guys personally. We trust you. Right. And so we were like, they're not like pitching us they're not like trying to, but we had a friend of the family who was a lawyer look over the FDD, and he was like, this is a terrible idea. Don't do it. Yeah. Because there was no history, right? We were the first ones signing on as franchisees. Yeah. Right. So it was terrifying. It was so terrifying. And like you said, I remember Jimmy being like, I need them to like tell us it's going to be okay. And he was like, no, we can't tell you it's, you gotta, but like I said, like, I think we knew we were going to do it, but we just had to iron out and make sure everything made sense before we took that plunge. But wow.
Yeah. It was and I was just going to say, it was, again, like we said, we had a firstborn who I think was 3 years old at the time, and we had a baby on the way, and we had, we had just bought a house, I think maybe a year before.
Yeah,
And so
that was a nice house. That was an awesome house.
Yeah.
I really like
we actually had it. We had one of the company's parties there. I think one.
Yeah, I still have pictures.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
playing cornhole.
It was an A-frame.
Oh, it was awesome.
I love that.
So,
So-
I'm curious. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say. So the idea of just uprooting and moving to a different state and starting afresh, it was just terrifying, especially when all the naysayers were telling us that this was a terrible idea. Oh, you don't want to go into franchise, and this is,
Franchisees are miserable.
yeah, these guys are just.
I wonder what they're saying now.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
this is just their way. What do they say? That this is just their retirement plan to move to the Bahamas or something. This is just
There's
them.
no guarantee they're going to keep supporting you. I mean, all the negative
Oh my
things,
God.
all the things, And I actually have my cousin's husband who's in business. He's a great guy. I adore him. He like spent an hour trying to convince us not to do it. And now he's like, oh my gosh, guys, I can't believe I did that to you. He's like, this is the best decision of your lives. Like he feels guilty about it to today, but it's still, it actually like spurred us on.
Yeah, including my own dad, who's been in business before. I mean, he was like, but I think he was more cautious of the fact that you need to know all the details. You want to be able to do your homework before you make a decision. And that was wise counsel, I believe. And so when we finally decided to do it, we said, okay, we're just going to do it. Yeah. We're just going to do it. If it fails, it's not because we didn't work hard. It's because the system is not working.
Yeah. And ultimately we're people of faith, and we truly believe that this is the way that God had us going. And, there was like little testers of like laying out our fleece and saying, okay, God, if this is what you want us to do, then our house has to sell. And at that time, it was not it was not like things were not going quickly. Things were sitting on the market for a year, and our house sold in like a month and a half, and like little things like that just kept us moving. So
I guess the system worked, huh, Jim?
It's yet to be determined.
The system worked pretty good?
Well, yeah, we definitely want to talk about that. But I wanted to say something about a lot of times the people that are saying, don't do that, why wouldn't you just go in on your own? It's normally the concept in their mind is, why are you going to give them money or royalties or pay them a percentage? You could keep all that yourself. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Is that statement, what do you think about that statement?
I tell people now that if you have the entrepreneurial spirit and you want to be a business owner, and this is like what you're excited about, why not franchise, right? Like, why
reinvent the wheel?
Why reinvent the wheel? Why start from scratch on something that people have done, have a brand, a system, an idea that you can jump on board with and not start, from nothing? Why?
Your guys' situation's a little bit more unique than the typical person, though, that's looking to start like their own mom and pop type business or have the option to go franchising, because a lot of people, I think, were looking in at your guys' situation saying, hey, Jimmy, you have all this year's experience and you work for these guys. So why would you want to team up with them when you already know their systems? Why wouldn't you just go out and do your own thing? And, can you guys speak to that a little bit of, what was the decision in your mind that, made you lean towards making the decision that you did?
Right. I think, obviously the idea of sort of like a fast track, if you will, was also appealing, and especially I felt like, in my opinion, I was more in a sort of like a desperate mode where, again, like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had a communication and media arts, degree. And my wife doesn't think I use it very well because I don't communicate very well at home. So, I need.
As long as you communicate well with your employees,
Right.
that I do very well.
Hey, that directly benefits you, right, Jessi?
That's right.
What's that?
Him communicating well with the employees.
Oh yeah. No, and the other thing, I think the other thing. Oh, no, I lost my train of thought. Oh,
well,
go ahead.
I
Finish
didn't
your thought. Go ahead.
So the idea of the fast track was appealing. I just thought, man, if I start my own thing and it didn't work out, for an extended period of time, I would probably have regrets than if I went with something that's already established. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I didn't have to, come up with my own everything. And so that was appealing to me. And so we just decided, you know what, let's go with this one because it's already established. I think the results can come much faster than if I started at Jimbo or Jimmy's Gutters.
We knew nothing about business.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, it's scary when I think about it now. It's terrifying how much we did not know about business. Like, not a class in business, not a book, not a obviously not a degree. So it was really like we trusted you guys to help teach us too.
That was the thing. And I definitely want to talk about your guys' transformation in business and who you are now, from knowing nothing about business to actually becoming mentors and people picking your brain. But I do want to ask you about, there's this saying that we've all heard since a kid called the American dream, and it might mean different things to different people, and it might be sort of almost in a negative light by some people. But I mean, when you think of the American dream, what does that mean to you?
I think everyone, especially in America, they define the American dream differently. I think the sort of like conventional description of an American dream is, you have a nice job, you have a wife and kids and a decent sized house with a, white picket fence and stuff, and that's the American dream. So for some people, the American dream is owning 5 private jets and living in 5 different mansions every weekend. That's their American dream. For me, knowing my background and where I came from, coming into this country with very little, I think I probably had like $20 when I came here, and being able to kind of work my way up. If I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and I stayed that way, to me, that would have been an American dream accomplished. Wow. Because coming from where I came from, at the time, opportunities just weren't there. And so if you ask me now, what is the American dream? I feel that I've worked my way in the last almost 18 years that I've lived in this country to be able to come from where I came from with $20 in my pocket to where I am right now, where according to the conventional American dream is, we have a nice house, married with, a beautiful wife and 4 beautiful kids. And we own a business and we have employed people and given them opportunities. And so it's not just for us. Not only did we create opportunities for ourselves, but now we have created opportunities for other people. And for me, that is an American dream accomplished 1,000,000 times over.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's great.
So I remember specifically, and this was probably after you guys bought or right before that, Jimmy, I think you said this. You said, Ryan, I'm going to follow this system to the T. I'm going to do everything you say, because if this fails, it's not going to be my fault. It's going to be your fault. Now, sitting here on this end, you guys have definitely followed the system closer than anybody, I think, so far. Why was that so important to you?
Well, now we'll answer this in 2 parts. I'll start and then she can kind of, chime in. But again, I wanted to feel like I did my part and that the system did its part. On my part, I wanted to know that I worked so hard that I left nothing on the table. On the system's part, I wanted to trust that if the system was real, it will work. And so if it didn't work, it wasn't because I didn't work hard, it's because the system was flawed. Okay. So my idea was, if I combine the working hard with the system, following it as it should be, the combination of the two should produce a great result. Right. And so I remember saying it to you guys that, Ryan, Kenny, this is what our goal is. We've talked about this, that we are going to follow the system. Whatever it says, exactly how it says is, we will do that. And I will work hard so that if it doesn't work out, it's not because I didn't follow the system, it's because the system does not work. And we came here and we followed it.
Well, I told him, I remember telling him, obviously the system works. Like, they grew. I saw you grow, because when Jimmy and I got married, that was just at the beginning of when you guys really started to, you guys rebranded and you started with the coaching. And I saw the skills ladder came in and I saw what you guys were doing. And I thought, we can recreate that. So for me is, I know that nothing Jimmy touches is going to fail. He works too hard. He would not let it happen. He would not allow us to fail. That I was confident of. So I already kind of knew, like, okay, these systems look like they're working well, and Jimmy would never fail us in this. So it was like double confidence there.
That's awesome.
And that's a great point that you brought out there. It's that, you know, the activity level that Jimmy has just in everything that he's done is hard work. And just because you buy a franchise doesn't mean that you're not going to have to work hard. You definitely have to work hard to make the systems within a company, you know, run. It's not, those systems aren't going to run themselves. And Jimmy, you're definitely one of the hardest workers I've seen. So you've done a great job.
Yeah, I think if I would, I think sometimes there's this idea that, well, you know, if I'm going to buy into the system should just make things work, and that should make me a successful business owner. So I think that those who subscribe with that idea and then they don't come in and do the work that it takes to get the system to work so that it produces results. On the other hand, there are people who think that, well, I'm such a hard worker that regardless of if I don't follow the system, if I don't follow them well, that should make me successful because I am a hard worker. And if that's the case, then, you know, go start your Jimmy Gutters. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I said, there's got to be a combination of the two. Right. If you're a hard worker, you follow the system, you put those together, it produces results, period. And I think that we are a living proof of that, probably 10 times over than what we actually expected. We didn't expect that we'd be where we are today. So
that's amazing. So hard work's important, and there's no doubt that you guys are the hardest, you know, working people, you know, that you work so hard. But how did you go from that doesn't always translate into a great company. That might translate into somebody who can make a good living for themselves or be a good owner operator, but you guys have actually built a team. And you're probably one of the best recruiters out there as far as getting people and getting them to work for you. And you built a company, and that's hard work, but that takes special type of leadership and culture. Could you talk about that? How are you able to build a company, you know, that has your type of work ethic?
Yeah. Well, for once, I think you know, we tried it the way most people do, which is, you know, like, I went on Craigslist and, you know, Indeed and blah, 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 and I'm not really getting any, any recruits or anything like that. For us, you know, first of all, when we started, it was word of mouth, and then we're able to get, you know, 1-2 guys who we basically brought in, talked to them about the vision of what we wanted to build, not just a job that was for them at that moment, but that, hey, think about yourself a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, what we can be together if we work as a team and if you buy into the vision. And so I think we did a great job of, casting that vision for our people to be able to see. And then, of course, you know, over the years, we went through some people here and there. And we reached a certain point where we were just really struggling to recruit. We wanted to go from 1 truck to 2 trucks, and we just couldn't get to people. And the head trash started to kick in.
The head trash is real when it comes to recruiting. And it is just that. It's trash. It's not, it's fiction. It's not real. It's whatever you make it to be. What's that?
What's fiction? That you can't find people?
That you can't find people, that you can't find good people, that you can't, because we believed that. And I think we had a changeover in our mindset because we thought, I don't know, especially when you're a small business, I think you kind of feel like people are doing you a favor. I don't know why. That's ridiculous. But you kind of feel like, oh, finally we got somebody. Like, oh, they believed us. Or, you know, I don't know. It's so stupid. But then we had a changeover in mindset because we were at the Grand Summit Conference. And this is another reason why you got to keep reading, educating yourself, listening to podcasts, being on YouTube, whatever it takes. Rub shoulders with all the best of the best because it starts to wear off on you. And there was a photo that Nolan Painting down in Philly, which is an hour from us, they put up a photo of their team at conference, and it was 100 people, 100 painters.
That's just folks in the field. And I remember very, very clearly.
He looked at me. He was like,
it's like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
He's like, we're complaining about recruiting 5 people, that we can't get 5 people to work for us in the field. And we know that we pay well, probably higher than the average, around here. And I said, and we can't recruit. This has got to stop. This is just nonsense, head trash. Yeah. And so that picture, I remember actually taking a picture of that picture. Okay. And I said, if these guys can recruit 100 people to work in the field, there is no reason why we can't be able to do it.
He became an animal. I'm not kidding you when I say we got to the point where I was like, we have too many people. I told him that. I was like, we don't have enough trucks for all these people. Like at one point, we literally had 12 guys and 5 trucks, and we bought another truck because we were like, these are all good guys. We have the work. Let's get another truck. It was like Jimmy became insatiable. Plus, he filled a role that he needed to fill for a long time, which was giving up sales and hiring a killer sales rep that freed up his brain to be able to recruit better. And that it was
everywhere we went, we recruited. And what you begin to realize too, that as you get rid of the head trash and you start to really work hard and looking, past just the conventional ways of recruiting, as you build that team, the team now starts to kind of build itself, because now, this one great guy says, hey, listen, I have this friend, or I have this cousin, or this brother-in-law, this guy who I used to work with him, and he's a really good guy, and he doesn't like where he's working. And I've talked to him about the culture that we have here, and he wants to come and work. Just this morning, we had a guy who started working for us because his friend who's worked for us for 2 years has been pursuing him relentlessly to come and work for us.
See, well, there's a lot of things that you guys hit on right there that we could go down and talk about. Culture, creating opportunity for others. The one thing I'd like to hear you talk about a little bit more, from the time that you took that picture and saw that 100 employee plus company, and to what Jessi said, to getting your company, she's like, no more, Jimmy. We have too many applicants. It's just going crazy. It sounds like to me, she said specifically that you just became an animal about it. And I really feel that that's a really important piece there, because I think in order to overcome the obstacles that we overcome, whether it's recruiting or it's hitting a revenue goal or anything in business for that matter, I think we as owners we have to become animalistic about it. And can you just describe a little bit about what were the behaviors that you changed from that time to get to that time? It sounds like to me you raised your activity level and educational level and learning about all things recruiting. Is that safe to say? Can you describe what that looked like over the time that it took?
First of all, I stopped listening to the crowd. Sometimes you want to validate certain things. So like I would be struggling recruiting, and I would be like, hey, are you also having the same problems I'm having recruiting? I was like, yeah. So then you're like, all right, so I'm not the only one.
It's so hard.
So one of the things is I had to stop talking to the wrong folks and, basically tune them out. That was very important. That's part of how you get rid of the head trash, because people help you put trash in your head. So I basically, blocked them out. Secondly, I started thinking, okay, what other ways can I recruit other than the Craigslist and the Indeeds and stuff? And that means, if I was at a networking event, part of my pitch was not just about the services I provide, but hey, by the way, we're really growing in the Valley. If you know anyone who's looking for a great place to work, have them give me a call. And we got, some candidates from there. Again, like I said, it was just being able to talk to, we developed, for instance, bonus programs and things like that for folks who already working for us, who, would tell them, hey, if you know a great person that wants to work for us, you already know the culture, they're going to love it here. If you can recruit someone, we're going to give you this certain amount of money. So you sort of like a combination of those things, I think is what is,
there's a confidence too that comes along with building your business, where you know what you've got and it's good. And we know this. I get emotional when we talk about our team, because we know how much we love them. We know that we would do anything for them. And so we know it's a good thing for someone to come work for us. it does. It becomes a part of all your conversations. Like, oh, if you know anybody, like, because we know that they're going to come and they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to become a part of a great team and a great system and a great vision for the future. So,
and you guys have done that so much so in your business that from what you've just said is that you have a waiting list of people that are waiting for a position to open up in your company. That's incredible, because that just talks to the culture part that you were talking about there, is that you've created awareness in your community that you have a great culture, and people want to have a great work environment. They leave jobs monetarily, but when they get there, and if the culture's not good, they'll leave to go to the next job that pays a little bit higher. Yeah. But when you've created such a, how did you guys learn how to do that? Like, how did you create such a great culture to go along with the system? Obviously, that's important. They go hand in hand, right? You can have a great system, but if you don't know how to create a good culture and then you're leading these people and creating opportunity, then your business could fall flat on its face too. Can you speak to that a little bit?
You meet Ryan and Kenny. That's initially how we did it. So listen. So I was an athlete. I was always an athlete. And one thing that you do as an athlete, if you want to get yourself to the next level as an athlete, you change your thinking, right? You do visualization. You find another athlete that is significantly better than you, and you emulate that athlete, right? Like, how does she move? What does she do? How does she lead her team? And you start emulating that person. And that's what I've always done in my life. And so we used to we didn't feel it in the beginning. You don't feel like you don't have that confidence. But we would go into meetings especially with our team. You're like, all right, you be Kenny and I'm going to be Ryan and let's go, let's do this thing. And especially in the hard ones, especially in the hard meetings where you're having to talk with someone about something that you're not happy about, or things like that, and being able to, because it's a maintenance thing too. You're not just building a team and like, look at all these people that want to come work for us. Not everybody is worth hanging on to. And I love when we can look at our guys in the eyes. I told them at our Christmas party this year, our end of year party, I was able to look them all in the eyes and said, if you're here, it's because I don't remember my exact, but because you deserve to be here. Nobody is here that should not be here right now. And it's trimming the fat. It's getting rid of people that don't fit the culture. And Jimmy he had a switch over in that as well. We had some really toxic people on the team at times.
Yeah. I would say too, again, working in New York, we saw, and you heard us speak about emulating. So a lot of it are stuff we were emulating what we saw. And I think you guys have heard me say this, where we never looked at you guys or they're up there and we're up here. You're always like on the same level. And so that was a style of leadership that you chose, where everybody mattered. That we weren't just employees and just numbers. You'd find someone on the hallway and you say, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. You do like a fist on the, you know what I mean? And so obviously, we would go out sometimes like, hey, it's a team hangout this month. Then we just go out and sit somewhere and have some, some wings and stuff like that. So a lot of that are stuff that we absorbed based on my experience then. I saw it working and how it kept the team together in New York. And I said, I want to copy that. And so a lot of the stuff that we do today, now we've made some of it our own, but there are things that I experienced, number one, and I absorbed them and I brought them, and now I'm imparting it into my organization.
That's amazing. So I want to talk about you talk about how much you worked in the beginning, and I don't think anyone buys a business thinking or starts a business thinking that they're going to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week for the rest of their lives. We obviously do what we got to do to get to the other side. Right? And now you guys are 5 years in. When did that change? And do you feel like you're on the other side? Or talk about that transition from going nuts to actually starting to reap the benefits of why you sacrificed, moved your family, quit your jobs, all that.
Oh, man, the beginning was rough. And I think for us, because we were sort of like the first franchisees. And so I think there was still a lot of stuff that you guys were working on to get better. So at the time when we started, it probably wasn't as great. But then I came in, we both came in, and we we said, we're just going to work hard. And so we sacrificed a lot. I think I was working probably like 16, 17 hours every day. I would start at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I'm not even sure where I was going at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I wouldn't be back until like 10 o'clock.
Kids are in bed.
Yeah. And then I would be back again the next day at it. But I mean, I was networking. I was putting up booths everywhere, just getting the name out. And then we started to kind of see sort of like the transition and the fruits. Like, okay, this is worth the hard work. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, so it came from 15 hours to 13 hours, and then to 10 hours, and then to 8 hours. Mm-hmm. And 5 years into it, just the transition that we have seen, it's mind blowing. Where sometimes I'm like, how did we get here so quick? What happened?
I know. Like I'm like, what am I going to do today? All right, let me find some networking, and I need a new book to read because, we're training people, we're managing people. But some mornings Jimmy wakes up, he's like, I guess I should go into the office.
So what I'm hearing is that there's different phases that you go through in business. So the startup phase, we all know, is a tough one, right? And that can make or break any business, whether you're a franchise or not. And it sounds like to me the activity that it's kind of like working out. If you go and work out once a week, you're going to feel that pain every week, and you're never going to get to the next level. It seems like you put enough activity into it and went through a lot of pain in the startup phase. And even though you buy a franchise, there's a startup phase, and you got through that pretty quickly, which I'm hearing kind of the sounds of like now your business is either semi-passive to passive. And I would say that's 3 phases that businesses can go through, depending on, what an individual's vision is for the business. Is startup, semi-passive, passive. Can you speak a little bit to that and where you guys feel that you've come from and where you're at right now?
It's pretty semi-passive right now. And I think a huge part of it is also, we talked about developing a team. And which is part of the franchise system. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was, how fast can we replace ourselves? Yeah. From every role the race to replace. A wise man once said that. And so we set up
TM by Jimmy Olang.
We set up this idea and this vision of, we want to build a team so that we can quickly replace ourselves, because the more you replace ourselves, you replace yourself. Number one, now you've freed yourself to be able to focus on the bigger thing than the previous one. And not only that, now you have created an opportunity for somebody else to take. And so as we were replacing ourselves, or as we were building the business, we kept replacing ourselves, and that moved us to the next place that allowed us to keep now building the business. And so, it's like replace and you build, you replace. Mm-hmm. And, again, like I said, right now, we're at a pretty good place where we, the business is semi, passive, and we're still working at it.
We got to have like one last big, huge push to make sure that we don't get sucked back in. Right. That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, we're training up a field supervisor. We're grooming our office manager to be general manager in the next 2 years. She's hiring an assistant. We need more depth in sales. Right. And then,
And then I think we're on to the next thing. Yeah.
So Jessi, you've had an amazing arc with this company as well. Since you guys started, I know in the beginning you kind of were doing the back office stuff, and then that changed a bit. But like what I have seen in you is unbelievable, as well as what we've seen in Jimmy. But I can't help but want to talk about it, because you've literally become probably business coach level, going in 5 years, going from, calling us for things to then now people are seeking you guys out for advice. Talk about your arc. I'd love to hear about that.
I don't know. I'm a little more like Jimmy's, like tenacious, like get stuff done, like ferocious, like he's not gonna let something fail because he's just like, man, I'm a lot more cerebral. Like I have to be able to understand it. I got to be able to grasp it. And really, like when we first started, I had no idea how this was going to transform me. I still thought I was a teacher that was helping him with the business, right? And suddenly it was like, oh my gosh, like there's value in this. Like I can add value to this. And I really grabbed a hold of, I guess, like the more cerebral side of business, right? Like being on top of the numbers, just a ton of things. And
the details. So,
yeah.
We always felt, again, I think, the roles that we kind of took, like I've always felt like more like a Kenny who's like the visionary, the big idea, like, hey, we're going to do this, and then Ryan comes with, and I got some ideas on how we can put all the pieces together. Yeah. And so that has worked so well. I think the same way it's worked for you guys, it's worked so well for us.
Well, and I love that I can raise our kids. We've got 4 little ones. We got 8, 5, 3, and 8 months. And when we started, we only had 2. So we've been building this business while growing our family, which is like...
Every business does that to people. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
People have a lot of kids.
It's that magic number 4.
What is that? I don't know. But
mine had to break the mold here, though. Like he was too cool to hang out with us. He had to go to 5.
I'd rather make babies. Yeah.
But I also love the freedom of that. I love that, like, I can choose when I'm working and when I'm not, and that we can I could focus on the kids during the day, and I can work in the evening, or if I want to work during nap time, or whenever I want to work is when I'm going to work. And I really grabbed hold of, like, when the first conference I went to, I was like, I'm never missing a Grand Summit conference again. Like, that kind of stuff. I love learning. And I grab hold of it and I get excited about it, reading books and just, because that's the best way that I could support him. I can't go out and train the field. I can, but I choose not to, because our family is my priority, So I took on more of the, I guess, like the professional side of how do we hire talent? How do we, things like that. So hiring admins, being on top of sales, things like that.
But again, back to the question that you asked, Ryan, is, because she's so good with, being so analytical and the math brain side of it, which most of the time I have to yield to her for that. She's been able to, for instance, people who call for validation calls and things, she's able to walk, through it with them so clearly that they understand. People have called us sometimes for certain kinds of advice because she has that analytical brain. For me, it's more of like, if people call me, it's more like, oh, this is what you should think about doing. Where she jumps in there and she's able to break things down.
Well, because the coaching, the consulting and you guys creating a system, it's like there's an app for that. You know what I mean? Like, remember that silly old catchphrase that's how I feel about the business. It's like, there's so many people that we know. We have business owner friends that we adore that they're still kind of flying blind, and I'm like, there's an answer for that, because we've got the spreadsheet, or we've got this, or we've got that. I know if I can see it and I can grasp it, I know this is our goal and this is our gross profit goal. And I love grabbing hold of those things and being able to achieve, based on what's set in front of us. So
I love it. And you mentioned something about having the flexibility, and you're kind of on the other side of the business. And I know your vision is changing and you want to do bigger and better things because you got here faster than you thought. Let's dream a little bit. Let's say you're in your 60s, maybe even 70s. What do you picture? Do you picture that far? Do you picture your kids being in this? Do you have a little bit of that formulated at all?
I think, just like any parent, you want to create better opportunities than what you had, growing up. And so, I feel like we've created better opportunities for our kids than when I was growing up. And so the idea is always like, what about them? When they get older, what opportunities will they leave for their kids? And so it's always enticing to say, we want to build this thing to an empire that they can, then take over. Just like many folks, the Donald Trumps and the Bill Gates have created wealth that will be passed on to generations to come. And so for us, the idea is like, well, we want to build that. And if it's their goal to take over, that's great. But we sort of are in this place where we're like, we want to let them curve their own paths and choose what they want to do. But we want to leave this thing to a point where if they chose to do it, that it will be in such a healthy position that, and if it's not them, then we'll leave it to the next guy who will, obviously, value it as much as we do.
We were talking about this, that like, we feel like we still don't know what we want to do and be when we grow up. Like I thought I wanted to be a teacher. That's all I wanted to be when I grew up. And I wanted to be a mom. But then, it's like, oh, but like, I'm not dead yet, and it's like now we're business owners and we're loving it, but we're going to get to a point soon where it doesn't need our full attention. So what do I want to be when I grow up? Like the sky's the limit. And we've talked about opening. I would love to start a not-for-profit. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but it will happen. He's talked about other investment opportunities, things like that. So it's like
more brothers gutters.
Yeah, more territories, other businesses, who knows? But it's like we just kind of walk by faith and one step at a time.
And I definitely have seen, like, you guys especially, like, appreciate, I think you were the first ones that called us your mentors, and I think when you buy into a franchise or something like that, you can think of it more like, oh, those are the founders or owners, but you guys always thinking of us as mentors has always meant a lot. But I also see that in you guys. I see that, you value mentorship, and I believe you give it back. So I sincerely believe that as this thing grows and gets bigger, that you guys are going to have a role where you're utilizing your gifts in teaching. I mean, you're awesome at that. You grabbed on to situational leadership and a lot of the cool teaching stuff you love and you're really good at. And Jimmy, with the vision, with the systems, like I just see gigantic things for you. So I'm really excited about that. And the changes have been incredible, from Jimmy and flip-flops and a tank top to literally thinking about multiple territories, other business ventures. You've gotten so far, you guys, in your story arc. And I know everyone thinks you're an overnight success, but that took your whole life. That overnight success was, Jimmy, you figuring out what you were doing, going to Germany, not working out, coming here, looking for opportunity. Jesse, your same path, going through school, becoming a teacher. You guys continue to look for opportunity, and right now, 5 years into the franchise, you are where you are, and you're extraordinarily successful. But I just don't want anybody who's either listening or that we're mentoring, I think they always look at where you are right now and they want it today. And there is an arc to it.
It was so hard. Can I tell you that when we first started, we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 people, right? We had 3 kids.
Actually, we moved in with your parents as we were
for
starting.
a time. We sold our house. We moved in with my parents for a month or so until we found an apartment. We were in a 2-bedroom apartment, had another baby, stayed in that 2-bedroom apartment for 3 years, 2 years. So, things were hard. Things were tight. Things were strained. We were exhausted. Jimmy was burning out at certain points, which is part of why we had to replace ourselves. And, it's exciting to talk about and we get really jazzed up about it, but there was some.
Yeah. And I think that, again, like you said, a lot of times people think that it's an overnight success. And for us, it's not a journey that started 5 years ago. So, you can look at it and say, well, it only took you 5 years. No, for me, it took me, since 96, getting out of high school and having no idea, I didn't always love school. So, if you didn't, in Kenya, if you didn't go to college, even if you did go to college, opportunities were still very rare. So struggling, not figuring out what I wanted to do or even having an idea of what I could be. And, coming to this country, it's been over 20 some odd years in the making, coming into this country and kind of like starting from scratch, not knowing much and struggling through those years of working 2 full-time jobs for a long time, being fired from my job just 6 months before we had the baby, losing my health insurance, just working our way to now and then starting a business and then, kind of progressing to the point that we are. It's been years in the making. And along that journey has been a lots of ups and downs. I always say that if I was to write a story about my life, it definitely would be a New York New York Times bestseller. So much details of the ups and downs of life that brings you to a certain point. And so, it's not a 5-year journey. It's been many, many years in the making.
So if you could sum it up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So do you think that, now that you're looking at and you see these new wave of franchisees coming in year after year since you guys were one of the first, what what's your feeling about that, and how what do you think the how do you view the opportunity there for them that are getting launched, even this year compared to how you were?
They're in a much better position. If 5 years is a long time. I mean, what I love about the Brothers Gutters franchise is that you didn't build systems and stop at that. Every month there's something new that's coming, or something better that's been advanced.
Yeah.
And so they're starting from a much different place than we did 5 years ago. And the same for people who are going to start 3 years from now. And so the opportunities are real, and the possibility of success is real. And we don't sort of suppress the hard part of starting, but we can also testify to, if you put in the hard work, and if you follow the system, remember that if you follow the system truly into a T and you work hard, you're going to be successful. And I think we've proven that.
Well, and the same culture that we try to create in our business, you guys continue to create even in the franchise. Like, it's a family. I don't want to see anybody I want to see everybody destroy our numbers. Like, when people are like, oh, we're coming for you, I'm like, you better. If you're not doing $1 million by your second year, I'm going to be so disappointed in you. I want to see people do so well. I want to see people make our numbers look like chump change. Like, I want everyone to just to flourish, to the point where sometimes Ryan's like, Jessi, it's not like, I'd be like, well, maybe I can help them with their numbers, or like, maybe I can, like, what if I just, went in and it's like, it's not on me, but we really do have that like family mentality. Like, we're all in this together. We're all supporting each other. We're in constant communication, all the franchisees. And some people too, they come in with already having some sort of background in business. I was like, are you crazy? You're going to kill it. Like, you're going to do so awesome. So it's such a neat thing to be part of a franchise. I love it.
We appreciate that.
And we love having
Thanks so
you guys.
much.
You guys are our biggest cheerleader. It's awesome to see your success. And we love that we're part of it, but you guys are the ones that made it happen. So we talked about a lot today. We talked about a lot about hard work, a lot about vision. Sometimes you're thrown into the fire and you got to go make something happen. So if you guys could maybe sum it up, I'd love for you to sum it up rather than me. Anybody who's kind of maybe in startup mode, not necessarily, somebody who's bought a franchise, but how would you kind of sum up, to kind of get where you are if you're somebody who's in business or thinking about starting a business? How would you sum it up?
I mean, I think there's so many different ways, and I can tell my piece, and Jessi can and then add to that. But first of all, you have to start somewhere. If you're gonna fly, you have to start by crawling, right? And within that crawling, sometimes you fall and you flip over, right? And then you start to walk, right? And within that walking mode, you're gonna fall a few times, but you're progressing. Yeah. And then from walking, you're gonna run, right? And then from running, if you have wings, you can fly. Get ready to fly. So get rid of the fear. Someone said that fear is an enemy of progress. Yeah. Fear is an enemy of progress. If you're fearful, you can make all kinds of excuses. Oh, it's not the time yet. I don't have enough money. Oh, so-and-so doesn't think it's a good idea. So getting rid of the fear and the head trash and starting. If you have a dream, start today. You don't have to have, how do you Americans say, all your ducks in a row, right?
They're never in a row.
Never.
Put some ducks as you go, right?
One duck.
Start with one duck, but and then just grow. And I always say that, if a kid from Africa who grew up in the villages of Africa, who didn't have, all the rights of being an American citizen bestowed upon him, and I had to come here and work hard with the little that I have, and to be where I am today, you have no excuse. The fact that you're born in this country and you have every right and every opportunity, that's all you need. Everything else you can take and make it work. And we are here today, I think, because number one, I believed in the dream, the American dream, that if I came into this country and if I was given an opportunity of coming here, that's the only opportunity I needed, is to come into this country. And I've taken that and I've ran with it. Everything else I had to make for myself. So That's how Out Summit. So if you're thinking about starting with the Brothers Gutters or any other business, get rid of the fear. Start somewhere. Figure it out as you go. That's my story. That's my story. You want to add,
Jesse?
That's it.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you implement at least 1 or 2 nuggets from this episode that will give you the confidence to grow. Subscribe to our podcast to stay updated and grow with the bros.